Heart-Eye the Dare. It started because my brother owed strangers more money than our dad earned the year we lost the store. Mark had always been a collector of small disasters, parking tickets, maxed out cards, side hustles that never made it past the side. When he pitched the idea, I laughed because I thought he was joking. One night, streaming inside 11 Bishop's Row, the condemned Victorian with the boarded-eyes windows and the sinking porch, the place that had a decayed gravity in Graybridge, the way an old wound pulls at the skin around it. If we do it live, we clear 15,000, Mark said. Split it 5 ways. Rent, your student loan, my mess. You also clear your life expectancy, I said. Do you even know why they condemned it? Foundation instability. Sinkhole under the east lawn. He read it off his phone like the facts were talismans. We're not touching the east lawn. People say it swallows things, I said. Not dirt, people. That's folklore, he said. Folklore pays, Lena. He'd lined up a crew, Jonah camera, Priya paramedic student with a backpack of gauze and scents, Bo local historian who said the house was architecturally significant in a sinister way, and Abby skeptic, i.e. necessary oxygen. They called themselves Deadbolt from all the urban exploration. They shot in abandoned mills and shuttered malls. I freelanced as an architectural photographer angles. Light, the ghost of a design, not actual ghosts. I told myself I'd go to keep them honest, to control the image, to keep my brother off the roof. We parked 2 blocks away at dusk because the town posted no trespassing signs that looked like they had been peeled up and stuck back down by the same hand. The glue, a little more tired each time, the house rose at the end of Bishop's Row under an elm that had outlived every fence. Painted once a wealthy shade of green, now it flaked like reptile skin. 2 gables stared down like hooded eyes. You guys seeing signal? Jonah asked, hoisting the gimbal. Chat scrolled up his phone in hungry columns. The comments were the usual. Don't go in. Take the basement first. Say, show yourself. The internet is a chorus of bad ideas. Bo held out a folded photocopy of a newspaper from 1891. Steeplerite family. Lumber money. Half the town worked for them. They built 11 with all the tricks: balloon framing, hidden stair, a bell pull system routed like nerves. Mrs. Steeplerite hosted an art salon weekly. Then, after the 3rd flood, she boarded the front windows for the winter and never took them down. The 3rd flood, I asked. Of mud, Bo said. From the hill, their daughter disappeared. Their son went to war and never wrote. The town's memory is a tide. You think it recedes, but it pulls at your ankles when you stand up. Great, Abby Abby said. "We're here to be ankle-pulled." Mark swung the crowbar under the porch light and popped the temporary plywood on the door. He flashed me the same grin he used when we were kids, and he convinced me to hop the fence into the quarry. "Ready?" "No," I said, and went in first. The air was the temperature of a cellar breath, dust and violets. I found myself photographing, without meaning to, the way the last light speared a tear in the wallpaper, the keening curve of the banister, the floorboards cupping the light like old palms. My viewfinder made distance. That's what cameras do. They make the world survivable by turning it into something framed. In the foyer, the ceiling rose into an oval, and if you stood right in the middle, the room whispered. Not wind, not pipes, a hush like an empty church. "Okay," Jonah said softly. "That's an audio hallucination." "Buildings settling," Priya said. "Air pressure." We were giving it names, so we didn't have to call it what it was. A welcome, part Roman II, witness marks. Bo showed us tiny scratches bored into the newel post. "Joiners call these witness marks," he said. "They leave them to guide the assembly. You see them on old houses, the carpenter's private map." I leaned closer. The lines weren't random. They nested like little parables, notched where the grain rose. Some of them looked like tally marks, and then like letters with their legs hacked off. I traced one. "Don't touch," Abby said quickly, sharp. "It's a record," Bo went on. "A way of telling time with wood and knives. You know, there's a theory." He stopped because he heard himself about to become the guy in a horror movie who says the theory out loud and gets punished for it. "Go on," I said. "That some houses remember the hands that built them," Bo said, keeping his voice clinical. "Not like ghosts, like grooves, patterns. The next thing you build will carry what you carried last time." "You're talking about trauma," Priya said. "Carpentry," Bo said. "Same difference." We set up in the dining room because the ceiling was intact and there was a lantern hook. Jonah checked his batteries. I checked my lens. Abby did a perimeter with a flashlight for trip hazards and bodies, she said, not smiling. Mark wrote a list of shots on his palm like a spell. When he called action, he did it with too much joy. The live chat popped the second we went live. 100 watchers became 1,000. The house, finally. Film the basement. Ask it, "What do you want?" "Let's give them what they came for," Mark said. We started on the first floor, moving clockwise to make the mapping easy. The parlor was staged the way evacuation is. Chairs facing the door, a cold chimney. A little bird's nest in the ashes, with plastic ribbon woven through like confetti in old hair. That's when we heard it. A single knock below us, patient and certain. "Freeze," Priya whispered, already triangulating. "Foundation," Mark said too fast. "Ask it, chat insisted, 1,000 hands on the small of our backs. Ask it, ask it. Ask it yourself, Abby said to the camera. We're not circus. Another knock, and then another, but farther away, the rhythm passing under the floorboards like someone crawling beneath us, tapping beams like keys. It's moving left to right, Jonah said, panning reflexively. He wasn't chasing the sound. The sound was pulling the camera. It's the bell pull system, Bo said. They ran tiny lines through the walls for servants. If something's loose, it's not loose, Priya said. It's choosing. She was right. The knocks formed words, not letters, but spacing. 3, then 2, then 1. Pause, repeat. A syllabic code. I didn't know what it spelled, but I recognized the intent. That pure beam of attention searching us the way you search a face for a name. What do you want? I said, not to the house, but to the air inside it, to the frame. What's the story you think we owe you? All the lights went out. Jonah, Mark shouted. Battery's fine, Jonah said. His camera was still rolling, but the lantern died. Priya's headlamp flickered and then chose sides. Only Bo's penlight survived, thin as a fingernail of moon. In the little slice of brightness, the witness marks on the newel post seemed deeper, like they'd been cut again while we stood and talked about them. Part Roman 3, the first door. We found the kitchen by sound, the refrigerator-sized dark, the scar of the sink under our palms. Where's the back door? Abby asked. There's always a back door. There is, Bo said. Right wall. When my hand found the knob, it was warm. I turned it and pulled. The door opened into another foyer, not the one we'd entered, but a twin built without finery, plainer. The way you draw a house as a child, square door and a square window, and a square of darkness beyond. I swung the door closed and opened it again. The foyer persisted. Don't, Priya said. Do not do that again. It's a false perspective, Jonah whispered. A trick of. He stopped because his camera was peering around my shoulder, the gimbal gently pushing against me like a curious animal. The live chat was foam. Oh my God, go in, don't do it, go. Mark, I said. He swallowed. We stick together, he said. It was the first time that night he sounded like my older brother. We went through, 6 of us squeezing into a space that had no room to hold us, and the house accepted the math. You could feel its satisfaction in your teeth. The air tasted faintly like pennies. On the far side of the second foyer was a family portrait nailed to the wall with 2 nails that had been driven through the eyes. The faces were scabbed with nicotine and time. A stiff father, a ghostly mother, a girl with a ribbon that looked like a noose, a boy with a soldering iron in his lap. Someone had written liar in pencil under the boy. Someone else had erased it and written witness. Isn't this supposed to be the backyard? Abby asked. I hate it here. We should go back, Priya said. She said it the way you say stop to a dog about to step into the street. The house tilted an ear. We can split, Mark began. No, Abby and I said together. It saved us for an hour. We moved deeper. The hall jogged left, then right, then straight in a way that didn't reconcile with the external footprint we'd photographed. The rooms repeated with small deviations, like a sentence in a mouth that keeps being bitten on the same word. In every version of the dining room, the witness marks had migrated to a different surface. Door jamb, chair rail, a seam in the plaster. They were accumulating, and they weren't done. What are they marking? I asked Beau. A route, he said, or a ritual, name difference, Priya said. But she was sweating despite the cold, and she kept checking her pulse like her body had become a map she needed to read to stay alive. We found a staircase that shouldn't have existed, narrow and steep as the angle of a reprimand. Attic, Beau said, frowning. But we're on the ground floor. We're not anywhere, Abby said. Signal spiking, Jonah whispered. Chat says there's a woman in the attic window. Chat can see us from outside, I asked, or from somewhere else, Jonah said. Or nowhere, or it's a bot. Or the house, Priya said, and no one laughed. We climbed. The steps were narrower than my feet, which are small. Concentrating on not falling colonized the whole front of my brain and saved me from hearing the whispers inside the house's breath. The attic door opened on a room that was not an attic. White tile, a drain, a lab sink. Someone had dragged a refrigerator in and gutted it for sheet metal. A ham radio sat on a milk crate, antenna feeding into a vent. The radio clicked. A voice said, "Do not answer." I have never wanted to answer anything more. "Do not answer," the voice said again. It was a woman's voice, flat, with the kind of authority that grows around fear like lacquer. If you can hear me, you're inside already. That means it wants a witness. Do not tell it your true name. Do not leave any of you alone. Do not bargain. Every bargain is already a lie in its mouth. Who is this? Abby asked the air. She sounded brave. She sounded like she was carrying all of us underwater on one breath. The radio hissed. If you got in through the kitchen, you can still get out, the voice said. Find the room with the rug, the green rug with the rose. There will be a hatch behind the stove. Hit the plank with 2 nails bent in. That's the knot that breaks the floor. Wait, Beau said. His eyes had widened, the marks, the nails. The radio clicked off as if a switch had been thrown in a mouth. Don't, I said to the silence, like I could put my hand in the dark and catch the voice's sleeve. The ham radio sat like a remnant, the showroom model of a miracle. Guys, Jonah said quietly. We all turned. His camera was still streaming. His face was not in it. The gimbal turned steadily, filming a bare turn turnbuckle on the wall where the camera harness had been clipped moments before. Jonah's shoulder rig lay on the tile as if it had been unbuckled off a body that had chosen not to be there anymore. Jonah, Priya said softly, like shielding an animal with sound. Jonah, say something. The radio answered. A single click in a pattern that I knew now. 3, 2, 1. Part Roman 4. The green rug. We ran. You think you will be measured in horror, that you will become the version of yourself you wish for, calm, capable, watchful. You will not. You will be a leaping, grabbing animal thing. You will say no, 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 not as a word, but as a sound, like a wet match struck again and again. We found the kitchen by wrongness. We found it by the smell of cold grease and the vibration under the stove, a subsonic purr as if the house itself were making the noises needed to be a house. Pipes, vents, a small heart. There, Beau said, pointing at the rug. It was green with a rose, faded to the color of abandoning. The stove wheezed when I moved it. Behind it, the wall had been scored with hundreds of shallow cuts, the knife lines overlapping until they made curves that looked like letters if you were lying to yourself. The hatch was precisely too small. We pried it up. The crawl space breathed. Mark swallowed visibly. After you, he said to me. Cute, I said. We go in pairs, 2 and 2. Abby up top watching. Priya last to cover if anyone gets stuck. That's 5, Mark said. What am I, air? Beau exclaimed. You're the brain, I said. You stay with Abby. If the house is arranging us, make it go through the smart kids first. Priya went first, then me. The crawl space was a dim throat. The plank with the 2 bent nails was at the far edge where the floor's voice deepened. I hit it with the crowbar. The sound it made was not correct. Too hollow, too human. The world unlatched like a trunk. The floor dropped away and we dropped with it, falling not far, but longer than gravity. I landed on my shoulder in a room that had been behind the kitchen until a minute ago. The light in it was inexplicable, oily bright, like a stage set illuminated by someone with a grudge. Priya rolled and came up in a crouch. Okay, she said breathlessly. Okay, count. We counted wrong, the way you always do when panic fouls the tied tables of your brain. There were 6 of us before. There were 4 of us now, me, Priya, Mark, Abby. Beau was gone. I could have sworn his ankle had been in my hand before the floor let go. Beau, Abby called in a voice that made the light itself pause in its work. Nothing answered. Don't answer if it calls, Priya whispered. Remember the radio. You saw her too, I said. The woman's voice. I heard it in my bones, Priya said. Like you hear your own name from another room. We pressed on. The house had made a decision, and we were inside it. The rooms had been emptied the way a hand empties a pocket, abrupt, unceremonious. Only the witness marks grew richer. In a study with glass-fronted bookcases, someone had scratched a grid over the entire expanse of a wall and then cut out neat squares, like a calendar peeling itself. In the master bedroom, the closet rods had been notched every inch, as if measuring a child's height, until the marks outgrew children entirely and became measurements of something else. Bad days, confessions, bargains kept, and bargains broken. "What's that?" Mark asked, pointing to the ceiling. Above the bed, the plaster had fallen away in a long flower, revealing joists on which someone had written when the plaster was wet. The words were upside down. I took a picture, rotated it on the screen, felt the temperature inside my body drop. If you must feed it the truth. Under that, if you must lie at the beginning while you still remember what is real. Under that, if you must leave someone, leave the one who believes the least. They will die fastest and spare the rest. Someone wrote that not to save themselves, Abby said. They wrote it to wound anyone who read it. Or because it was true, Mark said. Truth isn't a religion, Abby snapped. It doesn't ask you to worship it with blood. It asks you to witness. I said before I remembered to keep my mouth shut around the house. The knock came right on that word, witness. The floor answered me. Somewhere beneath us, the beats counted off again. 3, 2, 1. Pause. 3, 2, 1. It's a pattern, Priya said, eyes dilated. It's looking for a rhythm it recognizes. Heart, breath, footfall. Liar, liar, liar. That's 4 words, Abby said. Everything repeats until somebody stops it, Priya said. And if nobody does, the pattern wins. I'm ready to stop, Mark said thickly. You can't be, I said. We can't give it a bargain. That's not what he looked at me, and I saw real fear there. Fear of the kind that is heavy because it has a name hidden in it. He pulled me aside by the door as if the house would respect privacy because we used an inside voice. You were right. I researched this place. I didn't tell you. Mark, I started, little needles under my skin. Not anecdotes, he said. Not YouTube reports. I pulled the county archive. There are 2 past incidents here, both before the condemnation. 1 missing person, 1997. A woman just vanished in a code inspection. The other was a kid in 1985 who went in on a dare and came out different, catatonic in the ride-up. He learned to talk again, but he said things. He said the house isn't a haunting in the regular sense. In what sense? I asked, keeping my face placid. Because fear is a currency, and you shouldn't let anyone price you. He said the house is an editing room, Mark whispered. A place where stories get cut to fit. Something inside the wall shifted, the sound a grub makes when it molds. Jonah's camera, still somehow streaming, blipped a notification. Chat, he's telling the truth. Don't tell the house your name. Chat, your real one. We stared at the screen as if it could save us. Somewhere between the signal and the comment, something smiled. Part V, what the house wanted. We took the narrow stairs up to the second floor that might have been the third. The house had softened the risers with wear, so our feet kept trying to slide backward. At the landing, the hallway forked like a tongue. We chose left because left is for leaving. The room at the end had that rug again, the green rug with the rose. The stove hulked where the bed should have been, as if the house had asked itself what a room was and guessed wrong. On the far wall, above a dresser whose mirror had been shrouded in an old coat, someone had pinned index cards in a constellation. On the cards were written names, not full names, their sounds. Mina, Bo, Abbe, creased, like they had been handled in dry hands. One card said Mar, and then nothing, as if the hand had stopped mid-name. What the mark began. I was already next to the dresser, lifting the coat. The mirror underneath was filthy from the inside. Behind the glass, the shape of a room superimposed on this one shifted, slow as regret. I saw the dining room, then the foyer, then a basement stair we hadn't found yet, and then a shape inside the mirror turned its head. Don't, Priya said. I put the coat back down. We kept moving. In the next room, we found Bo. He was standing by the window with his hand pressed to the glass, as if feeling for warmth. He was not looking out. His head was tilted like he was listening to music that we couldn't hear. Bo, Abby said, relief knocking her voice down a step. Where did you go? He turned. He smiled, but only with his teeth. I was here, he said. He sounded like a man repeating a line that had tested well. I found the books. Everything is fine. Bo, Priya said softly. Blink. He didn't. Okay, she said. You're dehydrated. Sit. I can't, he said. He looked at us with infinite interest. I just realized something about witness marks. They don't just guide the builder. They certify the thing was built. They testify. And I asked because the house was listening, and I had to bury my fear in conversation. And the house wants the same, Bo said. A mark that says we were here. A signature. Attention is how you sign. Behind him, something moved in the glass. The reflection of me raised an arm I hadn't raised. It wrote in the fog on the inside, "Tell the truth." Then it wiped itself away with the heel of its palm. Come with us, I said, binding my voice to his name. Please, I'll catch up, he said attentively. I want to make sure the books are in order. There are no books, Abby said, then stopped. Because on the desk behind him sat a ledger that hadn't been there before. It was open to a page filled with tiny penciled script so tight it was like fabric. I took a step closer and read. Jonah needed to be seen. Easy, Bo, will stay if you let him be the smart one. Abby will stay if you call it real. Mark will stay if you forgive him. Priya will stay if you let her save you. Lena will stay if you listen. I closed the book. My hands were clean, but I wiped them anyway. I reached for Bo, then stopped, because the space between my fingers and his skin felt like a web that would not break if I touched it, but would close. Bo, Priya said, what color is this rug? He glanced down. Green, he said. It's blue, she answered. The rug was green, but he didn't notice the lie. She took my wrist and pulled. We have to go now. We left him at the window in a room that was not a room. The house led us, because it had the number of us wrong, and it was satisfied with its arithmetic. I'm going to puke, Mark said softly, as we entered a hall that broke left, then right, then climbed. I should have told you everything. You told me enough, I lied, because now that I'd seen the ledger, I understood that the house's appetite wasn't for flesh. It was for narrative. It was for believability. It wanted what we are to each other when we are trying to make a story make sense. It wants a witness, I said out loud, letting the words enter the plumbing, letting them find the pipes. That's why the knocks. That's why the ledger. Houses don't care if you're afraid. They care if you're paying attention. Attention is love, Abby said in a hard voice that didn't know how to be gentle. It eats love and calls that proof. It eats story, I said. And the problem with stories is that once you start, the only honest way out is the end. The stair rose into the topmost hall. The door at the central gable was ajar. The room beyond it was as clean as a hospital, crisp, with the ringing clarity of a place unused. At the center stood a table. On the table lay a hammer and a nail bent into a letter my eyes refused. Mina, said the invisible whisper. My name cut into a breath. Mina, my. Not my name, I said. Not anymore. I had changed it in college because I wanted to change my life. I had told my family Lena, like linear, like the clean line you draw through your own mess with a ruler. The house had heard our father say my real name once and kept it in a jar like a bad tooth. Don't say it, Priya whispered. Make it forget you. That's not how memory works, Abby said. It is here, Mark said, and I heard in his voice a second voice there with him. An echo that was not an echo. He was about to say the name I had buried, and I turned to him with with a look that said, "I will never forgive you," and "I already have" at the same time. He shut his mouth like a wound closing. The table, the hammer, the nail. A ceremony you could perform in 1,000 churches, in every courtroom, in every family kitchen. I picked up the nail. I looked for a place to drive it. "Careful," Abby said. "Anything you build into this house will belong to it." "What if we build a lie?" I asked. "It will belong to you." I bent the nail a little more until it was an open mouth. I placed it on the table, a useless thing, a relic already. "No," I told the house. "You don't get to say what happened here. We will." The floor answered with a shock that traveled up my bones. A crack ran along the baseboard, clean as a cut made by someone who knows where to cut. Something in the walls inhaled, and then, because the house is a place, and a place is a system, it exhaled. Smell that came out was not rot or mice or mold. It was the smell of old paper and ink and the oil of a hand. The smell of kept records. On the wall opposite the table, the plaster trembled and then fell away in flakes like dandruff. Underneath, words bloomed in a hand I recognized from the ledger. Tell it and live, deny it and die. A simple dichotomy, the house's favorite instrument. "Okay," Priya said, and I loved her then for saying okay to a thing like this, for being the person who finds a bandage for an existential wound. "We tell it, but we tell it wrong. It will know," Abby said. "Not if we tell it the part it wants most, and we leave out the part that makes it whole," Priya said, and she looked at me a long time. "Not if we tell it an incomplete truth, a wound we can live with." "What part does it want most?" I asked. "The part where you stay," Priya said, and her voice cracked the way a rope cracks in storm wind. "The part where you promise to feed it forever." Part VI, Confessions. We made camp in the clean room because it felt like a neutral zone in a battle we were losing. The house was listening so closely I could hear the studs vibrate. I let it listen. I opened my throat wider than it wanted. I said, "This is what happened." I told it about our mother. I didn't plan to. The story rose like a hot current and carried my mouth. I told it how she had wanted to leave Graybridge and never did, how she'd kept a box of brochures from places she'd pretend to be going next year, Santa Fe, San Luis Obispo, anywhere with a soft name, and how she died behind the register while I was editing an apartment listing, faking the curve of the light to make the room look kinder than it was. I lied for a living, I said, looking into the part of the wall where the house's breath caught and deepened, where the listening was a mouth. I turned rooms into stories, and I never asked the rooms what they wanted. The house loved that. A shiver ran through it like applause. The floorboards swelled. "Now you," the air said without words, turning to Mark. He tried to choose a different confession. His eyes knocked around the room the way birds slam windows. But the story he owed was the one he owed me. I sold the idea, he said dully. The stream. I told sponsors I had an inside angle. I pulled the county reports without asking you because I knew you'd tell me not to. I knew if I said the right things, you'd come anyway because you always do when you think you can fix me. I use you like a tool. You're not a tool, I said. It was a small, ordinary lie. The house hummed like a purr. It could tell we were feeding it. Me, Abby said. She didn't look at any of us. I came because I want to be the person who doesn't scare. I came because I'm tired of other people's superstitions being louder than my reason. When I was 9, my aunt died in a house fire that everyone in my family said started itself because she had invited some spirit in with her grief. I watched a slow system fail, a bad heater, a missing inspection, and then I watched my family blame grief like grief has hands. So I came here to hold the line against magical thinking. But I can hear it. I can hear someone in this house, and it wants a shape. I hate that I want to give it one. The house shivered again, but smaller. Abby's words weren't the taste it wanted. It wanted ritual. It wanted voice. It wanted attention that looks like worship. It wanted me and Mark. Me, Priya said last. She stood in the doorway, the way you stand at the threshold between a hospital hall and someone's room, the spot that keeps secrets from falling out. I came because somebody has to be the adult. Because if I'm there, then maybe it will be fine. That's the lie I tell to put my shoes on every day. She drew a breath so deep it touched the ceiling. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, house, she said conversationally. We're going to leave. We're going to take the stairs down to the original kitchen. We're going to walk out the back door, the real one. And on the way, we're going to tell you the truth you asked for. But only part of it. You'll take it because it's sweet in your mouth. You'll let us go because you love the sound of us telling it. And you'll think that means you have us forever. Silence folded itself. The house leaned in. Let's go, she whispered. Now, part Romans 7, the stairs that weren't. It didn't let us go. Of course it didn't. It changed the steps on the way down. It slid rooms in and out like drawers. It put Bo where he wasn't and Jonah's voice where he couldn't be, laughing from the basement in a way that made your teeth ache like a cold wind hit them. Don't answer, Priya said every time we heard a voice use our names, like a train guard keeping a child from falling through the gap. Breathe. Keep walking. The house ran ahead of us, laying down its courtship gifts. An open front door full of snow that didn't fall on the lawn, a kitchen with a brand new clock wound to the right time, a parlor with a fire burning without smoke. We didn't step into any of them. The path through a labyrinth is made of refusals as much as choices. Left, Abby said at a junction that had been a pantry last time we'd seen it. She didn't sound like a skeptic anymore. She sounded like a woman reading from a map she knew would hurt her. Then right, then through. We found the dining room by scent carousel. Violets, ammonia, old sugar. The rug was green. The stove was where it belonged nowhere. The hatch sulked under the stove in a place that wasn't under anything. We didn't touch it. Not that way, Priya said. Through the front. We went to the foyer. The witness marks on the newel post were so deep, now you could have set a coin in them. I pressed my thumb into one, and a splinter slid under my skin, a bright, thin burn. The house drew a bead of me into itself, and I let it because there are better things to save than blood. Doors there, Mark said hoarsely. We stood in front of it. The chat on Jonah's orphaned feed foamed do it, do it, do it, and it was background noise now, like rain you forget to notice after the first hour. Abby turned the knob. The door opened on the porch as we had left it, our footprints shallow in dust, the elm shaking a few leaves loose as if it were polite and clapping. The street beyond sat in its own picked clean quiet. No bargains, Priya said. No bargains, I promised. We stepped forward together. The threshold passed under my feet, and for a second, I was sure we would feel the snap, the elastic of the house breaking like a tendon, and then we'd be in the world where the sky does not listen. I took one step, two. On the third, the floor tilted, the porch slipped. The world below yawned wider. We were sliding not into a sinkhole, but into the beginning of the house, the crawl space under its first sentence. The house had moved the door the way a storyteller moves a comma, and now the porch opened onto its throat. Grab, Priya said, anything. Mark's hand clamped my forearm. Abby crushed Priya's wrist. Wood bit my palms. We held. And in that hold, in that moment of suspended fall, the house made its final offer. Stay, the word came from somewhere behind my left ear. The place our father used to murmur our names when we woke too early. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to rest the way a lake invites a heavy stone. Stay and give me your story. Stay, and I will make meaning out of you. Stay, and I will be the place that holds your bones when your name is lost. Stay, and it will finally make sense. I almost said yes. I opened my mouth, and my mother's name came out because that's the mouth grief gives you. I felt Mark jerk. He said my real name, the soft one with the vowel I had shed. He said it like a command. I turned my face to him and said the truest thing I had. We can't both be saved. Then it's me, he said, and before I could catalog the reasons that was noble or stupid or both, he let go. He slid, and the porch edge took his weight. For an instant, he hung, a man in a painting you hate, because it ends too soon. And then he vanished into the house like he was a word it had been missing, part Roman 8, the bargain we didn't make. Priya threw herself forward and grabbed the back of my jacket with both hands, anchoring me above the drop. Abby wedged her shoulder under the door jamb and pressed her legs against the newel post like an engineer bracing a failing beam. The house decided we were interesting, and the porch gave us an inch back. We scrambled onto the lawn, the grass already different, the night wrong, the elm holding its breath. Mark, I said stupidly, as if names were ropes. We can't go back, Priya said harshly. And when I looked at her, I saw that she was crying out of one eye, tears losing themselves in the grit on her face like stains that never set. People don't belong to houses, Abby said. He's not a thing in its mouth. He's a person. She stopped. Because the front windows of 11 Bishop's Row were no longer boarded, they were bright. In each, a television flickered, silent but urgent. On the screens, Jonah's feed played our night back to us, shaggy and without sound. The chat exploding at the bottom with comments that were not comments and never had been. You can get him if you go in. You can get him if you go in. You can get him if you go in. Don't, Priya said. Please. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But a nail worked out of wood with years and years of simple weather. Even grief understands leverage. The door trembled. The windows brightened, and in every pane, my brother's face appeared for a sliver of a second, looking impatient, like I was late for something that belonged to us. Look, Abby said, pointing to the foyer. The witness marks had crawled up the wall and across the ceiling, a black rash, converging at the oval where the hush came from. The marks made letters now, obvious and cruel. Witness. It wanted a story. It wanted me to go back inside and write an ending that required a sacrifice to match its appetite. It wanted the oldest kind of narrative, the one where one stays so the others can leave, the one where debt gets paid with people, the one where a house is a god and you are an offering with legs. No, I said to the house, no bargains. I took out my camera because that is the only tool I know how to use when I have nothing else. I framed the house. I clicked. The shutter sounded like final punctuation. You're going to feed it, Abby said. I'm going to starve it, I said, not believing it yet. I'm going to make a story so ugly it can't swallow. I'm going to tell the truth wrong. How? Priya asked. By everywhere, I said. Not as a password, as a warning. If everyone knows its shape, its edges, if everyone refuses to be impressed, if everyone chooses their own endings, then it can't narrow us down. It can't edit us without our consent. You're going to publish, Abby said, her mouth twisted. You're going to call attention the cure. It's the only knife I have, I said. We walked away then, like people leaving a grave after the dirt has been tamped. We didn't run. Running is a choreography the house understands. By the time we reached the car, the night had lions in it, sirens, a dog 3 blocks over, the wind chewing at a flag. I opened the door and sat inside and felt the seat accept me like a long-held breath released. Priya handed me water. I drank and drank until my throat felt like a place rain knows. Abby was the one who said, "We don't tell the cops." She looked sick when she said it. Because they'll go in. Because they'll lose another set of men whose wives will pull hope like salt water up their lungs. And we will have done that to them. We tell everybody else, I said. Priya looked at me for a long time. He told the truth, she said finally. In the ledger, he will stay if you listen. I am listening, I said. I will listen for the rest of my life, but not to the house. Part Roman 9, the story that eats. I wrote until the light came up, and the edges of my hands gleamed like paper cuts. I wrote about witness marks, about ledgers, about ham radios and index cards with names carved down to sound. I wrote about doors that open into the same room and rugs that declare themselves. I wrote about my brother, who has always believed there is a door you can sweet talk into opening, about the way he says my real name like he's remembering an earlier draft of me, about the half second his face hung there above the house's mouth. I wrote about attention as a predator, and about us as the red meat we walk around inside. I published without calling our father, without calling anyone. The site took it. The site loved it. The story spread with the fervor of mold. Comments multiplied. This is fake. This is real. This is art. This is trauma. How dare you? Thank you. You forgot something. 2 days later, someone sent me a video clip of 11 Bishop's Row. In it, the porch drooped with the pleasurable exhaustion of a thing recently fed. The front windows were boarded again. In one slat, a knot hole had been chiseled into a shape I recognized. O, then P, then E-N. Don't go. Priya texted me every morning for a week. I didn't. I went to work, pointed lenses, at apartments with skylights that claimed light they didn't own, cooked meals that turned into leftovers, slept with the light on like a child. The house lived under my floor in the space between tile and joist. Every time someone shared my story, I felt it pulse. You can call that superstition, I call it feedback. Abby came over on the 8th day with printouts and a look that said she wanted to apologize to rationality. I tracked the signal, she said in the tone she used for dismantling bad claims. From the ham radio, there isn't one. There never was. I found a model like it in a catalog, discontinued in 1992. That voice doesn't exist. She existed enough to warn us, I said. The warning was the trap, Abby said, voice fierce in its grief. It gave us a path that looked like leaving but was still inside the story. It made us participate. Participation is survival, I said. Participation is complicity, she said softly, and I had no good answer for that. That night, my father called for the first time since I published. He said my real name, like it, was a door key. I didn't correct him. He asked how my brother was, and I told him the only truth I could while still keeping my promise. I don't know where he is. Our father cried once in my life, halfway into a drought that broke the year he put the store up for sale. He didn't cry now. He said, I was a poor carpenter kid. I left my share of marks. You remember that shelf in the pantry that never held anything? That was me pretending to build. You do me proud with your building. After we hung up, I sat on the floor with the camera beside me and the story open on my screen and realized what I'd done. I had fed the house its favorite meal, a story that compels attention, a story about itself, a story anyone can step into by reading it. I had granted it a new foundation, an audience, and its joists ran now under not just one address, but under every room where someone reads this, under every floor where a nail works loose at night. It had been bound to a lot on Bishop's Row. Now it traveled by link, by word of mouth, by the million tiny rituals we do when we repeat something that scared us. If you have ever loved a monster, you know the difference between starving it and teaching it to hunt. Part X, the ending we chose. I went back to the house. Of course I did, but not alone. Priya drove. Abby sat in the back with a coil of rope that was half theater prop, half talisman. We parked in daylight. The elm was sleeping the long, easy sleep trees have in the afternoon. The house had put its shoulders down, uninterested. We approached anyway. Don't go in, Priya said again, and I nodded, and we didn't. We stood on the sidewalk, and I took a picture from across the street. I framed it with a lot of sky, the way you photograph a person who hurt you and survived anyway. I said not to the house, but to the space around it where stories cool. I won't give you the ending you want. Inside, under the front windows, the ledger lay open on the floor. I knew this not because I could see it, but because the story had arranged itself that way. I knew it the way you know where your own keys are when you're already late. What ending does it want? Abby asked. The one where I replace him, I said. The one where I feed it until it lets him go. Or the one where we all give up and say the house wins because it always wins, because narrative gravity. What ending do we get? Priya asked. This one, I said. The one where we leave the door open, the one where anyone who reads this knows the rules. Do not say your true name. Do not bargain. Do not go in alone. If it knocks, you count the knocks. If it offers you a story you already want, you refuse. If it asks you to witness, you witness each other first. This won't bring him back, Abby said gently. No, I said, but it won't take anybody else I love without earning it. We turned then, ordinary as a family leaving a house that is not theirs. Behind us, the boards creaked. A nail lifted its head. The porch sighed, wanting. And far beneath our feet, something adjusted to the weight of our refusal and made room for it in the frame. I did not hear my name again, coda for the reader. You're waiting for the last scare. Every story like this has one more hinge, one more door. You think it's the knock you'll hear when you turn out the light. You're wrong. It's quieter. It's the sentence you say tomorrow at work when someone asks what you read last night. It's the moment you repeat my words in your own mouth and the shape of them fits. It's the way you look at your walls and think witness marks and watch your skin for splinters that aren't there. It's you wondering which of your names the house would choose. Listen for the knock if you want, or don't. Close your browser. Put your phone face down. Watch your reflection dim in the black glass. Count your breaths. 3, 2, 1, pause, because here is the real ending. Houses do not die, they forget. And then they remember again if someone helps them. Attention is the hand that turns the key. I am done turning it. I am setting this down like a tool you don't trust anymore. I am leaving the door open behind me and walking into the part of the story where the house has to survive without my voice. If it wants you, it will have to call you on its own. If you hear it, don't answer, or do. Either way, you will make a mark. Either way, the floorboard under your bed will sound loose tonight, and you will be tempted to press your foot down to see if it holds. Don't. Not because of me. Because you already know whether it will, and you don't need to test what you've already learned. This is my witness. This is where I stop.